This is part 3 of our drop stitch braid purl side scarf tutorial. So I'm going to show you how to close up the end of your tube to make it flat, and I'm also going to talk about what I did but don't do if you want to make it a little bit easier on yourself. So here is the cast off side. This is the easier side to close because you can see I am counting my stitches. It kind of looks like normal if you use waste yarn and you've closed a tube flat before. I count 24 stitches on either side. I start with the tail ends of the yarn at the bottom, and I count 24 stitches on either side of the tube to make the tube even. And then I take my crochet hook, I pick up each 24th stitches, and then I slip stitch them back and forth all the way down to close down the tube. So this is the cast off side, and if you looked at part 3 when we took the project off of the machine, that's how we were able to drop our stitches to make our drop stitch braids, and then we put it back onto the machine. When we put it back onto the machine, the knit side became the interior and we kept the purl side as the exterior. And so then when we put on our waste yarn, you can see the machine purls the yarn. So when you normally are cranking your rows on your machine, you see the purl side when you're looking the top down view as you're cranking the rows. So I took that off, I flipped it, so it was the knit side, which is the little V's, put it back on the machine, and then I put on my waste yarn. And so this is the easier side to close because the waste yarn, as we're picking up these stitches, is still on the exterior, so we're able to remove it very easily. So I will fast forward this because we'll get to the other side, which is the cast on side, which ends up being the difficult side to do, but I'll teach you how to make it not difficult. So this was kind of a trial and error for me. But this side, we removed the waste yarn, easy peasy, no problem. This side is the cast on side. And what I realized when I went to close this one, to see the stitches to pick them up, you have to curl in the waste yarn so we can see the stitches like the other side to close it up the same. Well, if you close in the stitches, then, you go to close the stitches like normal, your waste yarn ends up being on the inside, and so you sew in your waste yarn to the inside. So what I ended up doing is I just pre-prepped the waste yarn. Since this is the cast on, the first row of the waste yarn locks in, so I pulled that yarn free, so when I pull the tail into the yarn it just drops really easily. And then I start to slip stitch close the yarn, but you can see I'm now sewing in the waste yarn. But since I did that pre-prep, I was able to very gently pull the yarn and it did all come free. But you could run into an issue of the yarn snagging or knotting, and then you're left with all this waste yarn trapped inside your scarf. So I will make another video of what to do, and what I should have done, and I can explain it here as well, is I should have closed up this end first, because it doesn't matter how you put on your waste yarn. I tried it this way. Obviously this way doesn't work very well. I also tried casting on with my waste yarn. I took it off with my knitting needles, flipped it to the knit side, put it back on the machine, and then I did my rows. But it still does this on one end. You're always going to have a problem end where it wants to close like this. So what you want to do is close this end first, flip it inside out so you can remove the waste yarn from the free open tube end, and then close your easy end like I did, unfortunately, first this time, and then that one is on the outside and it makes it really easy. So that's me trying to explain it. I will do a video showing what to do next in part 4, but you can see here, if you do it this way, it is possible to remove that waste yarn. You just have to be really careful, be slow, and take your time. And I'd kind of have to pull it and stretch it a little bit, and then I would pull very slowly on my waste yarn tail to make sure it didn't snag, and I was just hoping it didn't knot, and fortunately it did not knot. So it can work, but if it knotted in there and you weren't able to get any more out, I'm not really sure what you would need to do. You'd probably have to cut some of these stitches and pull, and you may still end up with some yarn that's hidden in there forever and can't get out. So Once I removed all the waste yarn, then I just knotted the tail ends of my yarn. I secured them in place, and then I hid my extra tail ends in between the two layers of the scarf, and this is how it turned out. So I appreciate everybody coming on this journey with me on how to do the scarf with the drop stitch braid on the purl side. Please like and follow for more tutorials. Coming up, I'm going to do the drop stitch braid on the knit side. I am working on those tutorials now. Happy crafting!